Once there was a woodcutter with 2 children and their stepmother. The boy's name was Hansel, and the girl's name was Gretel. They lived so poorly that sometimes there was not even anything to eat. And then one evening he lay in bed, pondering how to feed the children further. His wife advised him to have children in the forest, light a fire, give a piece of bread each and leave them there, not all 4 of them die of hunger. But the woodcutter did not agree. And until then, his wife persuaded him that he finally agreed. And the children, because of hunger, also could not sleep and heard everything that their stepmother said to their father. And when the parents fell asleep, Hansel secretly rushed out of the house. The moon was shining brightly, and the white stones glittered like coins. Hansel pocketed as many of them as he could fit. Then he returned home and the children went to bed. In the morning, the stepmother came to the children, gave each of them a piece of bread, and they all went to the forest together. On the way, Hansel threw out white stones one by one. When they arrived at the clearing, my father began to light a fire. He ordered the children to sit near the fire and make sure that it didn't go out, while they and their stepmother would go for more firewood. They sat, tired, and fell fast asleep. When the children woke up, it was a dark night all around. And when a full month had risen in the sky, Hansel took his sister by the hand and went, looking for the way through the pebbles, which glittered like new coins, and showed them the way. They walked all night long, and at dawn they came to their father's house. Some time passed. And the children again heard how the stepmother one night began to beg their father to get rid of the children. He refused, but his wife did not want to listen to him. She cursed and expressed all sorts of reproaches to him. When the parents fell asleep, Hansel, like the last time, wanted to collect stones, but the stepmother locked the door and the boy could not leave the house.
Thank you.
Early in the morning, the children were given a piece of bread each, even less than the previous time. On the way to the forest, Hansel shredded his piece in his pocket and threw the crumbs on the ground. The stepmother took them even further into the forest. Again a big fire was lit, and the father ordered the children to watch the fire while they and their stepmother chopped some more wood. When lunchtime came, Gretel shared her piece of bread with Hansel. And they fell asleep. We woke up when the dark night fell. And then a month came up, and they got together on their way, but they could not find a single crumbs, because thousands of birds fluttering in the forest had long been eating those crumbs. So the children walked for a very long time, but they could not get out of the forest. Suddenly, the road led them to the hut. Coming closer, the children saw that the house was all built of bread and biscuits, and the windows were made of pure sugar. Hansel reached up and broke off a piece of the roof, while Gretel went to the window and began gnawing at its windows. And then the door in the hut opened wide, and the old woman came out, leaning on a crutch. Hansel and Gretel were so scared that they even dropped their tidbits from their hands. And the old woman was kind and invited them to her hut. There was already abundant food on the table: milk, cookies, apples, and nuts. After dinner, the old woman made 2 clean beds for the children, and Hansel and her sister thought they were in heaven. But the old woman only pretended to be affectionate, but in fact she was an evil witch, who built her bread hut for this purpose in order to lure children. Early in the morning, while the children were sleeping, she took Hansel and put him in a small cage. And she ordered her sister to do everything that the wicked witch demanded of her. The old woman decided to fatten the boy in order to eat him later. So Gretel began to cook the most delicious food for Hansel, and she herself got nothing but leftovers. Some time passed, and the boy did not get fat. Then the old woman did not want to wait any longer, and decided to cook and eat Hansel. She ordered Gretel to light the stove and apply water. When the stove warmed up, the old woman ordered her to climb into the stove and see if it was hot enough. So she wanted to push the girl into the fire and bake her. But Gretel knew what was on her mind. She said that she did not know how to get in there, and asked the witch to show herself. The old woman got angry and climbed into the oven. Then Gretel pushed her and slammed the shutter behind the witch. Wow, how terribly the old woman howled then. Gretel, meanwhile, rushed to Hansel and opened the cage. Having freed their brother, they went to the witch's room, in which there were boxes of pearls and precious stones in all corners, filled their pockets with them, and went home. For several days the children were looking for their way back. The forest seemed more and more familiar, and at last they saw their father's house in the distance. How glad he was to see his children alive! Hansel and Gretel poured on the floor all the pearls and gems they had taken from the witch. There was no need to think about food. And they began to live, and rejoice. And the father drove the evil stepmother out of the house.
Once upon a time there lived an old man and an old woman in a small house on the edge of the forest. Everything in their life was arguing, only one thing was missing: the old man and the old woman did not have children. Once the old man asked to bake a gingerbread in the shape of a little man. The old woman looked into the barn, and there was almost no flour left. She took a bowl, scrubbed it along the box, swept it along the bottom, and a handful of 2 handfuls of flour gathered. The old woman kneaded the dough with sour cream, and when she was rolling out a gingerbread on the table, she took it and made it in the shape of a little man with arms, legs, with a head, and put it in the oven. After a while, the old woman came up to see if the gingerbread was baked, took it and put it on the window to cool. The gingerbread man cooled down, lay down, but suddenly got up and ran as fast as possible out of the house, from the window to the bench, from the bench to the floor, across the floor, and to the doors, jumped over the threshold to the porch, from the porch to the courtyard, from the courtyard to the gate, farther and farther. The old woman called her husband, and they both rushed after him. But it's not so easy to catch the gingerbread man. Now, he has already reached the field where the peasants were threshing their crops. Running past, the gingerbread man shouted at them that he had already run away from the old woman and the old man, and he would easily run away from them too. The peasants heard this and ran after him. But no matter how fast they ran, they could not catch up with him. A gingerbread man ran up to the field where the mowers were mowing the grass. Running past, he shouted to them that he had already run away from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and he would easily run away from them too. The mows could not stand such ridicule. Everyone rushed after the gingerbread man. They run as fast as they can, but they cannot catch up. And towards the little man the cow is walking, he shouted to her that he had already run away from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and he would easily run away from her too. The cow got angry, and also rushed after the gingerbread man. Only he cannot catch up. And to meet him a pig. The little man shouted that he had already fled from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and from the cow, and he would easily run away from her too. A pig screeched and ran after. Only she could not catch up, she was too fat. A gingerbread man runs along the road, and a hare meets him. The little man said that he had already run away from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and from the cow, and from the pig, and he would easily run away from him too. The hare heard this and ran after him. Nor can he catch up with the little man, only the hare saw him. A gingerbread man runs, and a wolf meets him. "I will eat you," says. And the little man answered him that he had already fled from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and from the cow, and from the pig, and from the hare, and he would easily run away from him too. The wolf growled and rushed at the gingerbread man, and he dodged and ran as fast as he could. Only the wolf saw him. A gingerbread man is running, and a huge bear is meeting him. His little man was not afraid, but shouted that he had already fled from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and from the cow, and from the pig, and from the hare, and from the wolf, and he would easily run away from him too. A ferocious bear stamped his foot and ran after him. But the bear was too slow to catch up with the fast gingerbread man. A gingerbread man runs, and a fox meets him. The fox was very cunning, but the little man did not know this. Therefore, out of habit, he began to shout that he had already fled from the old woman, and from the old man, and from the peasants, and from the mowers, and from the cow, and from the pig, and from the hare, and from the wolf, and from the bear, which means he will easily run away from her too. The fox listened to the end, and said that she was very old, did not hear anything. She came closer to the little man and asked him to repeat it. Obeyed her silly gingerbread man, and began to brag again. The fox listened to the end, and said that she still did not hear anything. She came even closer to the little man and asked him to repeat it again. The gingerbread man agreed, and then only he started anew when the fox pounced on him, and ate it. And the gingerbread man no longer bragged about